Welcome to another KamicarzCreation video. The time has come. I've been struggling since I got this back off the tuner over in Coffs Harbour with a manifold leak, and probably been struggling with that ever since I put the supercharger on there, but it has been off and back on. It's running a standard exhaust manifold gasket, and I think it's been off and on a couple of times. Yeah, it's leaking. It's definitely leaking exhaust gases, which is affecting the AFR. And I've bought this copper gasket, and thank you to all of the guys on the Holden 6-banger supercharger and turbocharger site for suggestions. I've got the copper gasket there. I've got some ARP nuts, some spring washers, and some Ultra Copper gasket goo. I've also bought myself a catch can. It's only a small one, but just so I don't have to run those vacuum lines back into the supercharger. And I want to isolate. I'm running a T-piece in there, and had a few comments about how's my brakes work with the brake booster. They seem to be okay, but I want to get rid of that T-piece and run the rocker cover outlets into that catch can, and delete the need for putting the crankcase gases back into the supercharger. So that's the mission at this stage. Well, phase one, it's been a while since I've taken it off, but having had run it and know it runs now, it isn't as distressing as it was before. Looks like they've used a copper compound when they've put this back on too. I can see a fair few areas where it looks like it hasn't been sealing well, especially in the centre here. And you can see down the black coming down the engine block here, which I reckon it's this exhaust port that is leaking. But there's a little bit in front of that too, but you can see that black in there. So that's why I had such an erratic air-fuel ratio. I did get it better. I sealed it up, tightened it up initially, and it did get better, but then it's started to degrade again. So not a bad job to be doing. I'm pretty sure that's my original gasket, and that's been on and off a couple of times now. They didn't mention down at the coast that they replaced that gasket. They may have. But anyway, the copper one looks pretty good. I also did notice the spacers that were provided by Shane that I think came from Sonic. They're just a laser cut bit of steel. They do need some adjusting to get them pulling in right, and I'll have a look at that pretty closely. I actually took the fuel rail off. If we come over here, here's the old super. I took the fuel rail off in this disassembly to make it easier to take off, but it'll also make it a lot easier to fit it back up and get those spacers and washers, that's them down here, all lining up well and pulling down even onto the manifold faces. So not bad, first phase. So there's the evidence right there. That's on the 1, 2, 3 on 4 and 5, and on the head side she's black as the ace of spades pushing out through there. And if you have a look now, you can have a really good look. She's pushing a fair bit of heat out through there. There's a few wires down there that are copping a fair bit of it, but there's the culprit leak. The rest of it looks reasonably good, a little bit up the front here, but that's definitely the problem child up there, where I could see that heat mark coming down onto the block. Bit ugly, but anyway, sure needs a good clean up, and fit the new gasket on and see if we can put it back together successfully. I've spent a bit of time cleaning up all of the faces and getting that gasket to sit on there nicely, and on the top all of the spacer washers. I've sort of individually fitted them, welded little pieces on them, got them sitting flat. Now I'm up to juggling everything on and hopefully doing it all up in one go. I'm going to use some of that Ultra Copper Gasket goo. So I'm just doing the trial fit up at the moment. It's a nightmare lifting that supercharger on by myself and getting it fitted up. But I've got everything laid out now and it should work okay. So let's see how we go. Well, she's all back together. I don't know, this supercharger's been on and off that many times, but I've been chasing that manifold leak for a long time, and on some of the run videos I've had people pick up that toot 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 sound of pumping out, and you saw when I had it pulled apart earlier there that she's been blowing out and heating down that block a fair bit. So this time we've gone for that copper gasket. You can see it sitting in there, and I used this Ultra Copper Gasket goo, and another suggestion was using the ARP nuts. Now these are a 12-sided nut. You can see one sitting down in there. And they actually do up with a 1/2-inch spanner. These ones do anyway. I've been using a 1/2-inch spanner, which fits on there very nice, instead of the 9/16 spanner, which gives you a little bit more room. So that's awesome. And these are the standard studs that I'm running in here. They're 3/8 UNC to 3/8 UNF. So UNC on the head side and UNF on the stud side here, or the nut side. The only one that's different is, I don't know whether you can see it, the one right up the front here, which traditionally these were a dowel pin, but I haven't pulled that one out, and that's just 3/8 UNC to UNC. So she's all on there and sealed up. Now the great suggestions from everyone on Facebook from where I've posted this, and especially on the turbocharger supercharger site. Thanks heaps guys for all those suggestions. The gasket goo said to nip her all up until the goo started squeezing out, which it has been doing, and then leave it for 24 hours before tensioning it up. So that's the stage I'm at the moment. All of these little spacer studs, these came from supplied by Shane, but I think they were sonic injection supplied spacer, these little things down in here. And I've modified all of those, welded little bits in on in places and ground bits off in places, and I actually fitted the extractors up without the gasket on there, and then put the supercharger on without the gasket, and then got everything aligned, made every individual spacer fit where it needed to go. So they're all down there in each of the joint areas, and then I put that little white mark on the top of every one of them, so I knew the top face, the best way they fitted, and then lined them all up and fitted it all in, which is really good. And that supercharger, there's a fair bit of weight in lifting that on and jiggling it in between those extractor faces and getting it to sit there. So at this stage I haven't put the, there's a support rod down the bottom. I might have taken it off, but there's a support rod down there. I haven't put that on yet, and I'll fit that on once I tension it all up. But she's all looking good so far, and the proof will be in the pudding tomorrow when I tension it all up and hook all of the wiring and everything back up, and give her a kick in the guts again, heat her all up, and then I'll recheck the tension. Well, she's finally all back together again, running as nice as it's run. Definitely sealed up that manifold at this point, but I have had it at that stage before. Don't know whether it's the boost that pops the gasket or I've done a bad job before, but with that copper gasket and the gasket compound and the method I used to put it on, I think she should be well sealed. You can hear the nice little suck of the supercharger now. And that's basically a cold start. I've only just fired it up and turned the camera on. Running nicely. So the next thing is to go for a test drive again. See how she performs on the road. I think the AFR is looking okay. She hunts a little bit. But all good. Ticking away very nicely. Little bit of a burble out the back.